$2, 50 cents. Come see the biggest moth in the world. A unique collection like no other. 50 cents. Best deal in town. It was a sweltering July afternoon, and I was pedaling my bike around the neighborhood, hawking my ads for the bug museum I spent the last 10 days curating in secret in my dad's study. The room was lined with bookshelves, crammed with nearly every genre imaginable, and now also a sizable collection of insects, some dead, some living. I also had my hamsters in there to add a little cuteness. I knew the other girls in my neighborhood wouldn't pay to see bugs, but they would pay to hold a hamster. My plan was to use the money to buy a new microscope. The Science Toys catalog that came to my house 2 weeks ago had advertised one for just $19.99 plus shipping and handling. My mom hadn't noticed when her canning jars gradually went missing from the bottommost cabinet, and I wasn't letting out a peep about my secret project. Not yet. After about 30 minutes of riding around the neighborhood drumming up business, I returned home for the grand opening. And they came. In a gradual trickle, all of the neighborhood kids came to visit my museum. Some came because they were interested in what I offered, others because their siblings dragged them along. The McMichael kids, Michaela, Holly, Sam, Heather Dawson, Neil and Tony McAdams, Joshua, Chad, Travis, and Joey Powers, even Tyson, who was generally unimpressed and demanded his money back. Sorry, nuh-uh. The fee was to look, and now you've seen them. Can't take that back. Tyson turned away with a dissatisfied expression. Eventually, they all left. I counted my spoils, which I'd been storing in an empty Folgers can. $5.50. Well, it wasn't bad. But as I was still some ways off from that microscope, I was sitting on the steps of the front porch with my Folgers can, thinking of what I could do. I suddenly heard a racket on the other side of the screen door. Ruff! 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 It was my dog, Sugar Baby. She was really making a lot of noise. This wasn't her usual someone's here bark either. This was the burglar alarm bark. This was the I think the kitchen's on fire bark. Not good. What is all this racket? I ran inside and reached the door of the study at the same time as my mom. I breathed a sigh of relief that the door was still shut, but it didn't last long. Sugar Baby was still barking and staring straight at the study door. Catherine Louise. My mom gritted her teeth as she said my whole name. Uh-oh. It's bad enough the entire neighborhood came traipsing in and out of my house today. What do you have in there? If it's another creepy crawly critter, I swear you're sleeping in the chicken coop tonight. Gulp. It's nothing. I just moved my hamsters in there. They're probably just running on their wheel, and Sugar Baby can hear it. My mother didn't believe me. She opened the door to the study without another word, then shrieked, My good canning jars! Why? She stared at me disapprovingly, waiting for my answer. For science? She paused, looking around the bookshelves at a loss for words. Each jar was holding a specimen I'd caught over the past week or so. The collection really was impressive. No less than 15 specimens, including the massive Goliath beetle, only slightly smushed, next to a still mostly alive woolly caterpillar. There were several butterflies, all but one now dead, and a jar on the lowest bookcase contained a miniature ant farm. One a few shelves over had a giant wolf spider who was still crawling around. All of the specimens were meticulously labeled with their Latin names. Sugar Baby had come into the room and now directed her barking at a particular shelf towards the back of the room. A shaking, clinking sound was coming from it. My prized specimen, Hyalophora cecropia, North America's largest moth, and he was currently flapping his wings and beating himself against the extra-large pickle jar so hard that he was rattling it and the bookshelf. This was the racket that caused the dog's frantic barking. My mom was now staring around the room, mouth agape. I wasn't sure if it was because she was impressed with my clearly scholarly pursuit, or if she was debating with herself how to kill me and get away with it. From her expression, either reaction seemed likely and somehow appropriate. She closed her mouth and eyes, stilled her face, and took a deep breath. Okay, Catherine. Firstly, you're going to let these poor things go back to the wild where they belong. No fair. Wait, even the dead ones? Especially the dead ones. I am not turning this house into a bug mausoleum. That would be wicked cool, though, I said under my breath as she continued on. And secondly, she said, thrusting an angry finger at my face, you are going to scrub all of these jars out with soap and water and put them back where they belong. Okay, I thought, not so bad. Not great, but not terrible. Thirdly, she said, grabbing my Folgers can of money out of my hands, you're going to return this money to your friends. Mom, no, please. I worked really hard on this. I broke down crying. I just wanted to save up enough money to buy the new microscope. Please don't take my money. My mom stopped for a moment and seemed to be wrestling with what to say as I stood there sniffling tearfully. Okay, she said more softly. I know you really want it. She bent down to my level. But taking money from your friends isn't the way to go about it. She wiped a tear from my face, and her expression softened. She sighed. My little entomologist, Bug, what am I going to do with you? She shook her head and laughed softly, then pulled me in for a hug and kissed me on the forehead. Although I was still sniffling, I could tell she was no longer angry. Can I at least keep the Goliath beetle? He's dead, but if we keep the lid on the jar, he won't stink. And on Christmas Day that year, I unwrapped a brand new Junior Scientist microscope.